Being featured is brought to you by Lucky Horseshoe, A&R Electrical Services, and Patient Spirit Productions.
My guest being featured today is a physique champion, and having won gold at CAC 2014, he's the proud owner of a pro card. His name is Ramon Dodson. How are you doing, Ramon?
Not too bad at all. Feeling good today. Rested and fed, so happy.
Well, you started to compete just in November last year.
Yes, that was
I
my
know you
first.
have a story to tell, a series of wins. Just let us know.
Well, it wasn't necessarily a series of wins, but I did rack some along the way. But yeah, I did begin my journey November last year at the Darcy Beckles Classic in Barbados. And I didn't get a win there. I came second. And I was happy for that because I had some speed bumps in my preparation. About 2 weeks before the show, I got dengue, and that really threw me off of where I wanted to be for the show. But I had a strong enough physique to take second place. And thereafter, I would have done 3 shows this year, and just like that, I turned pro. The 3 shows I would have done would have been the Sports World Classic in Trinidad. I did that July this year, and then I followed that up with Nationals here in August, and then that qualified me for the CAC Games in October.
Okay, let's go back a couple of years. Would you say that you are genetically gifted for this sport?
Yes, I have to give my genetics some of the credit. I mean, I work really hard too, you know, but genetically, I think I'm well positioned to have a physique that is probably superior in the discipline. But I mean, genetics can only take you so far, and I'm with flaws, because we all have our flaws. But I think that I have found the correct balance right now of hard work, proper nutrition, and the genetics does the final 16th of the effort. So yeah, genetics are there for sure, and I'm blessed with good genetics, so I have to thank my parents and God for that, you know.
And tell us about the idea of being a physique competitor. Where did that come from?
You know, I've been involved in fitness for some time. You know, I'm a fitness professional, and I've done some modeling in my earlier days and so on as well. So having an aesthetically pleasing physique was essentially a part of my life for most of my life. I was involved in sports heavily at Combermere for my duration there. And the men's physique division of bodybuilding is relatively new. So it's probably like 3 years old or so. So when it first arrived on the scene, I was getting a lot of pressure from my friends and colleagues in the industry. You know, this looks like something that you would excel in. You should do it, you should do it, you should do it. And at first I was very skeptical, you know, especially having a background in sports, like more objective sports, track and field and football and these type of things where the winner is very clear cut and the way how points are adjudicated is very straightforward and objective. I was very skeptical about going into a sport that was so subjective, you know what I mean? Almost like a pageant style type of awarding of points. And I was not keen at all on the idea of competing. But you know, eventually I succumbed to the peer pressure, and the rest is history, I guess. You know, since I've begun competing, I would say I've really developed a serious passion for it. You know, it's really fascinating how the human body responds to stimuli and how you can extract change in your body, how you manipulate your nutrition and your training style and that type of thing. And it really, you know, I've always been involved heavily in weight training and these type of things, but I guess it gave my lifestyle a little more purpose. It allowed me to really set more acute goals, and yeah, and I find the whole journey fascinating. That's the truth.
Well, you've come a long way now.
Yeah.
Were there anything that you could admit of being guilty of earlier when you started training?
Anything I've been guilty of, I can't.
Because there are a lot of mistakes that people make, you know, when they start training.
Right.
Seriously,
Yeah.
most people.
I think that my foundation and my understanding of fitness and nutrition had me well prepared. So I can't say that there were any salient mistakes I would have made in my journey. Maybe some may argue that I might be guilty of overtraining from time to time, but you know, there are various schools of thought in terms of how one should approach one's training. And you know, I have not placed lower than second in any competition, so I think that my track record has spoken for itself. Of course, there are ways you can improve. That's not to say that I think that, you know, I have the perfect idea of how one should prepare for a show. Of course, there are ways you can improve, and to be honest, you know, with all of the shows I've been in, all 4 of them, I employed slightly different approaches, you know, from show to show. Because for me, it's, you know, as much as, you know, I have a strong foundation in the science of nutrition and training, you know, it is a science, and every day there's new information, and there are new ideas to explore, and you know, you try things that you might have learned at school would never work and don't make sense, and they happen to work, and you know, so it's really a fascinating world. So yeah, I've employed many different forms of competition prep over the short time I've been doing this, and you know, I'm learning things as I go. You know, I'm learning things as I go. Of course, there are basic principles that will never change, you know, but there's many ways to get a particular type of effect within the parameters of the basics, you know?
Okay. Is there any particular person or persons that you would have been checking having started competing?
Well, in the beginning, I relied entirely on myself, and that went fairly well. But you know, you can always get more with an extra pair of eyes or a second opinion, an alternate perspective. And so for my my last 2 shows, which would have been the Nationals and the CAC, I employed the services of a colleague of mine, a good friend, Corey Springer, who goes by the alias Narcissus, and he would have helped me and given me his perspective and some guidance and some pointers and things I should try differently and so on, in both my nutrition and my training for the Nationals here and CAC games. So yeah, and it went fairly well. I think it was a good partnership and a good move on my part to employ his services. Someone that you know, I've seen working with others that I trust and I'm familiar with, you know.
Okay, and your first competition, stepping on that stage, tell us some of the things that were running through your mind.
Why am I here? How did I manage to let my friends coerce me into doing this? I guess I better do it and get it over with, you know? Yeah, man, I had almost a semi-cynical feeling, and I had some doubts about whether or not it was something I wanted to do. But, you know, after getting on the stage and actually being right out there in the game, you could start to see how someone could develop a passion for it, and I did, you know? And then especially when, you know, you feel like you had things that come up that stopped you from getting the result you wanted, or, you know, when you don't get the result you want, period, that kind of makes you hungry, like, you know, you gotta come back, you know? I need to come back and conquer this, you know? So, yeah, that kind of, that picked me up and drove me to continue. So, yeah, that first show was an interesting experience for sure, man.
And who were some of the heavy rollers that you were competing against?
Well, at that time, there was a guy from Trinidad who came down, Rocky Cooley, very, very strong competitor, you know, he's a showman, so he really gives you a great presentation when he comes out on the stage. And then there was the undefeated Beijing champion, man, Marlon Dodson, yet to lose a show in Barbados. But I managed to clip him at CAC. But yeah, very strong competitor too, Marlon. So yeah, those were the guys, I guess, to look out for mainly in my first show. It wasn't a heavily contested field. I think we had about 10 people, maybe. About 10 people, yeah. But those 2 guys in particular were the big boys. Years, they had, well, not years, but months of experience on me, and, you know, they already had found favor with judges before and that type of thing. So those were the big boys. Okay,
let's get a little technical. Let's discuss dieting and supplements. On average, I guess the guys eat at least eight meals a day.
Well, that will vary from person to person, and I guess largely what will dictate the meal frequency would be your schedule, you know? Because at the end of the day, you're working with numbers. So you might be looking to get to particular totals in terms of your calories and your macronutrients. So you have flexibility in terms of how many meals you're going to have a day. To some extent, that may still be guided by your body type and so on. That may determine too how many meals you should aim to have a day or how often you should eat. But for me, I have a very high metabolism and I get hungry really quickly. So I would not be able to survive any less than 8 meals a day. So yeah, I averaged 8 meals a day in all of the preps for all the shows I did.
Okay, and if you were to talk about a basic meal plan, let's deal with science. When it comes to food choices, can you explain from morning to your last meal why you would select, let's say, 5 egg whites and so on and so forth throughout the day?
I'm very unorthodox in my approach. So let me put that out there first. I said that because you brought up egg whites, and in my entire life, I have never left out the yolk. I always eat the yolk. I believe it to be the most nutritious part of the egg. Yes, it's the fattiest part too, but fats are important and it is filled with healthy fats. I always eat the yolk. So let me just put that out there. Cuss me. Yeah, but my approach is very largely based around training. So I try to have a proliferation of nutrients, especially from carbohydrates, in close proximity to my training. My training is very intense, so I need to be fueled properly for that, and I need to be able to preserve as much musculature, especially in a time when calories are more or less restricted because you're trying to produce fat loss as well. I need to work to preserve musculature because I could lose muscle very easily. So I kind of have the nutrition is heavily padded around my workouts. So, you know, the breakfast would probably be like in the middle in terms of the scale of how large or packed nutrition-wise my meals are. But then the meals just before training, during training, and right after training are my most dense meals, most calorically dense meals. Okay. And then outside of that, in between, it would just be, you know, probably largely protein-only meals, some fiber, that type of thing.
Okay, let's move on to supplements. Something that is talked about a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, guys, you know, mostly go for creatine, protein, whey protein shakes. What was your take on supplementation and how important it is when it comes to training?
To me, it is critical, and that's simply because you cannot get all of the nutrition, especially in the times we're living in right now. It's very challenging to get all the nutrients you need from food alone. It's very, very difficult. It will be very expensive. And you know, we athletes, we don't, unless you're fortunate enough to manage to sway somebody in the private sector to offer you sponsorship, for the large part you prepare for these shows out of pocket, and it's very, very expensive. So supplements offer a convenient and more or less inexpensive way of making your nutrient totals, and they also offer you, I would say, the correct type of energy and nutrients that you need for training sessions specifically. So whey protein, for example, for me is a critical element in my preparation because yes, you can get protein from food sources, but when you're talking about having protein that's going to digest really quickly, that's easily digestible, and that's going to take advantage of what we call the anabolic window and that type of thing, there's nothing that really beats whey protein for me personally. So I definitely have that as a staple in my supplements. And I have used creatine before, but that is not as important to me. I think a multivitamin is very important as well. What else would I say? And I would say supplementing your fats too, because sometimes it's hard to get handy healthy fats just from food alone, and that can skew your totals up or down according to what you might be aiming for. So to be able to get some omega-3s as a supplement and so on is very useful. Salmon oil, anything like that, you know, to get additional fats in. Definitely important to me, for sure. Pre-workout supplements and so on are less important to me. Some people seem to can't exist without them, but I don't necessarily need those in my preparation. But definitely whey protein, fats, additional fats, and a multivitamin would definitely be staples for me.
How would you, the easiest way that you would explain building quality muscle, not gaining weight?
Well, you cannot build muscle without gaining weight, because muscle has weight.
Getting fat.
Right.
Let's say getting fat.
Well, you know, at the end of the day, that's going to be hinged on one's body type. You know, some body types are more prone to putting on fat than others, and it also would be hinged on the rate at which you hope to gain this muscle. If you're just trying to build muscle as quickly as possible and as much muscle as possible, then you're likely to put on more fat than someone who's going at it, you know, a little less haphazard and aggressively. But I think the slow lean approach is the best way to gain muscle without putting on too much fat. and you don't want to bump up your calories too extravagantly. You want to add slowly and see where your threshold is maybe, and then try to gauge from there. Same thing I would say too with cutting fat. Like if you're preparing for a show, you're trying to shed body fat, sharp decreases in your caloric intake is usually a great way to lose muscle and not much fat. So you have to be willing to first start with calculations and see where you are in terms of your basal metabolic rate. What's the minimal calories you need to sustain where you are, and then you want to shave off, you know, the calories in a less aggressive way. That's how you preserve the most musculature in my experience.
Okay, I know you're into personal training. Though you have an outdoor session happening.
Yes. I have multiple sessions, but I guess the most popular one right now would be my Shape Up program.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, well, I started Shape Up last year as well, and I got the idea to do it because basically I had a heavy one-on-one client load, personal training, one-on-one clients, and I realized that I was becoming increasingly popular and the demand for my services were going through the roof, and there are only so many hours in a day. So I decided I really needed to find a way that I could offer my services to many people at once and not feel as though I was stretched thin for time. And I also felt the need to be able to offer the average person a service that normally would be considered a luxury service, because personal training is expensive, it's a luxury service, you know? So the idea came to me, you know, I should probably do this group exercise oriented thing that would allow me to work with many people at once and allow me to benefit from economies of scale, so I wouldn't have to charge the prices that are normally associated with personal training. And you know, from the first one we had, it was a remarkable success, and it has just, you know, grown from there. And we've made it better, we've improved the service as well, you know. So we try to, I call it a transformation system or transformation program, because we attack with a double-edged sword. It comes with a nutrition plan. You get the classes under the tutelage of a certified trainer and now IFBB Pro. And you know, it's a all-in-one, one-stop shop, basically. So it's been going really well thus far. And I must thank all of the persons that have worked with me, my wife Selena, and my mother-in-law, and others who have helped me along the way to make it what it is today.
And for those who would like to join the class, how do we do that?
Well, it's just a matter of contacting us on Facebook. That's where we have most of our presence, and we have numbers there and email addresses and that type of thing. You can see befores and afters of persons that have done the class before, and all the information about the classes and other services I offer.
Okay, Doddy, it was very informative chatting with you today, and I'd like to thank you again for passing through.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.